Hello and welcome to Other Voices, brought to you by Peninsula Peace and Justice Center. I'm your host, Paul George. When I first set up tonight's program, the idea was to honor Pride Month, to talk about the successes of the LGBTQ movement over many years, and of course, to acknowledge and discuss some alarming rhetoric that's coming from the extreme right these days. That rhetoric has been alarming. And then the Supreme Court blew up the country. Alarm has turned into air raid sirens for our civil and human rights. Joining me, I'm really pleased to welcome Craig WIESNER, an old friend of the Peace and Justice Center and an old personal friend. Craig is a member of the San Mateo County LGBTQ Commission. Craig was appointed to the commission in November 2015. Along with his husband, Derek Kikuchi, Craig is co-founder of Reach and Teach, a shop in San Mateo dedicated to peacemaking, sustainable living, and inclusion that offers books, toys, and fair trade gifts from around the corner and around the world. Craig and Derek have been married for 32 years, and both have been deeply involved in social and economic justice issues and the peace movement for decades. Craig, welcome to Other Voices.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
The last time you were on was several years ago, and you and Derek were demonstrating some of the unique gifts and toys and fair trade stuff from around the corner and around the world. We're going to have to do that again this next holiday season.
That'll be fun.
That was really fun. Let's just get started on the basics. Why Pride Month? What is Pride? What do you mean by that? Why do we mark it every June?
Great questions. So Derek and I just had the opportunity last Sunday to preach at our church, First Presbyterian Church, Palo Alto, about that very question. And I know you'll be providing a link to folks who would like to see that 15, 16-minute sermon that we did on, the subject of pride. Why pride? The whole idea of pride started with a riot in New York, when a bunch of LGBTQ people had had enough of having targeted, abused for being gay. Police raided the inn again, and the folks at the bar had had enough, and they started a riot, and the riot night after night after night, and eventually resulted in the first Pride Parade. Got together and said, we are going to march through the streets to declare that we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to allow ourselves to be beaten up, abused anymore. So, it started with a riot, which ended up with a parade with people saying that we're not going to take being abused anymore. And these days, it's morphed into an amazing celebration of togetherness, power, demanding of human rights for LGBTQ people. And one of the wonderful things that I've had in the last few months is the ability to attend Pride events at, for example, the San Mateo County Fair and Pride Saturday in the park in San Mateo. What was so beautiful for me was seeing parents and children, some of the parents being LGBTQ and their kids supporting them, some of the kids being LGBTQ and the parents supporting them, just coming out and celebrating their love for each other and their love for community. So, in our sermon back last week, one of the things we talked about was 30-something years ago when a woman in our congregation asked, why gay pride? What's there to be proud about? And she said, I have nothing against gay and lesbian people, but, and as I said back then in the sermon, when somebody starts their conversation with, I have nothing against so-and-so, but, well, more than likely they actually do have something against. And so, we've spent the last 30-something years educating people that there's nothing to be against, and there's a lot to be for. Harvey Milk, one of the most important pioneers in gay rights, who was assassinated in San Francisco, he went out and he told gay people, you have to come out wherever you are. And the reason for that was that we needed allies. We needed people to know that we were out there. And the more we came out, the more allies we had, and the more progress we made as a movement. This morning, I read a post in the Daily Journal from a young woman columnist, and she talked about abortion. And she said one of the things that women have to do, those who've had abortions, is to come out, and let people know why and what that meant for them, so that there can be more and more allies for women's reproductive rights. So gay pride, Black Lives Matter, women's rights, all of these are tied together, and we all have to be out there marching together to move forward, for human rights.
Absolutely. Let me ask you slightly more personally. You and Derek have been married for 30 years. Obergefell was 2015, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So the decision moved us so profoundly. We never imagined 30 something years ago that we could be legally married in this country. If you talk to any gay rights activists back in the day, they would have said it was a pipe dream, that it was crazy, that it couldn't possibly happen. But again, I think it was Harvey Milk's call for people to come out, and the number of people who did come out, the number of allies that we created, and the education that we did on, the impact of not being able to be legally married. That people just came around. There came to be a tipping point, and it wasn't just, the Supreme Court's decision. It was a tipping point in public opinion.
Right.
And the Supreme Court looking at the law, looking at Loving versus Virginia, which said that the 14th Amendment makes it clear that the right to marry is a fundamental right. And we got lucky, and we had good timing that the Supreme Court looked at the Obergefell case and said, yeah, that right extends to LGBTQ people.
Yes. And we're going to talk more about the 14th Amendment and what Clarence Thomas has been having to say about that, but we'll save that till a little bit in the end.
Sure.
So, but when you and Derek got married, it was not legal. So who married you and under what circumstances?
So we had started attending First Presbyterian Church, Palo Alto. The pastors there knew that we were a couple. And at one point at some gathering, one of the pastors sat down with us and said, if you guys ever really wanted to get married, we want you to know that we would love to perform that ceremony for you, that we'd like to do that here in this church. And interestingly, one of the two pastors, Dick Sims, knew that he was going to be leaving the church in a few months. He hadn't told anybody that. He was planning to go to Venezuela to do missionary work. And so Dick kept, reminding us, guys, seriously, if you want to get married, we'd love to do it, really. And so when we decided, that sounds like a thing we really want to do. They scheduled the marriage to be about a month before Dick left. It was an amazing ceremony that we helped craft. We knew that it was a political thing that we were doing, as well as something that was affirming our love for each other and our commitment to be with each other forever. And one of the great things about that service was we asked the two pastors if sometime during the service they could stop and have a dialogue argument about why two men should be allowed to get married. And we've used that dialogue sermon that they did for the last 15 years when we present at Santa Clara University in a class on sexual ethics to talk about marriage. And the recording of that has influenced, a couple of thousand people since that time.
That's terrific. Great story. Let's talk about the San Mateo County Commission. When was it formed and whose idea was it? And then tell us a little bit about what you do on the commission and what it does for San Mateo County.
Sure. It was formed about 9 years ago. A bunch of LGBTQ activists started thinking about it around 11 years ago, and they started working on it, trying to get the idea to gain some ground. Worked with the Board of Supervisors. I was involved very late in the gestation of the commission, encouraging the Board of Supervisors to do it. In the end, they created the commission. I was then appointed as a commissioner about 2 years after the commission started. And basically, we are advisors to the Board of Supervisors. And our mission is to cultivate San Mateo County. I'm reading my little mission statement here.
Yes, I could tell.
As a welcoming,
Okay.
as a welcoming and safe environment for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities where all of our members can thrive. So our job is to basically look at the community, figure out what the needs are, and then make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors to make things better for that community.
Terrific. So let's go back to where you started to hint at about some very successful Pride events around the county this month. Talk a little bit more about that. You sent me some notes of some significant achievements.
Yeah, so we started out by doing a wellness survey to figure out what were the needs of the LGBTQ community, what were the things that they were feeling needed to be done. And one of the key things we got out of that survey was that the community felt invisible, and the community felt that support for the community was invisible. So around 5 years ago, we started working with every city and town and organizations within the county to encourage them to fly the pride flags or the progress flag, the newer flag, during the month of June. And now we are on our third year in a row where every single city and town and some school districts, fire stations, libraries have all been flying that pride flag throughout June. And it's made a huge difference in people's lives. We've heard from literally thousands of people that when they look up and they see that, they feel that they are supported, that they are welcome in the community. Sadly, when we first did the wellness survey, 70% of the people we surveyed, the adults that we surveyed, said that they didn't feel welcome in San Mateo County. So the flag raisings was something that we felt could make a huge difference.
Have you repeated that survey, or do you have any plans to repeat that survey to see how you're doing?
Excellent question. Yes. So we have on our commission, we have two subcommittees. One is visibility and inclusion that I'm on. Then we have a data committee, and the data committee is working on doing additional surveys, but also there's a lot of data being collected already by organizations like behavioral and health services. And we're going to try to tag on to that data so that we can get information from that in an ongoing basis. But yeah, we do plan to do an additional wellness survey. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see a vast amount of improvement, not just, flags, but we've passed legislation in the county. We have passed legislation in the state. We have new transgender rules in the county for employees. We have the single-use bathroom, all gender rules that we're helping to enforce all around the county. I think we've made a huge difference in the last 5 years, and I think we're going to see that difference when we do the next survey.
I'd be really interested in seeing those results. What's some of the county legislation that you've passed?
So the county was one of the first in the state to have significant rules on transgender employment and protecting transgender employees that come out. We have the bathroom bill that you've probably heard about. In our state, it's a good bill. In other states, they're bad bills.
Yes.
But this one says that all single-use restrooms need to be marked as all gender. And that helps people feel like they're safe and welcome. We've put together a way that you can find all gender bathrooms anywhere in the county through an app.
Great.
Probably the most significant thing that we did as a county was we signed on to an amicus brief for a case that was going before the Supreme Court about LGBTQ employment rights. And I'm thrilled to say that one passed at the Supreme Court 6-3, saying that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did protect LGBTQ people from employment discrimination based on sex. And, knowing that our county is part of that landmark decision is, for me, one of the proudest achievements that we have.
I'll bet. That's quite an achievement. Are there similar commissions in other counties in the Bay Area?
There aren't similar commissions within California. There are offices of LGBTQ affairs. Santa Clara County has one of the first of those that's in the state. And there are mayors that have LGBTQ advisors on their staffs, but there aren't very many commissions like ours.
All right. I'm glad to hear San Mateo is really on the cutting edge of some of this stuff. You're passing legislation, you have this unique commission, and as you just mentioned, spreading success and successful Pride events. For you personally, it wasn't all smooth sailing for Pride though, right? Didn't you have some hecklers or something that you ran into?
Yeah, so Pride at Central Park in San Mateo a few weeks ago, I had set up my booth for our business for Reach, and it was around 9:30 in the morning. The festival was supposed to start at 11, so I was just kind of sitting and relaxing in our booth, waiting for things to start when somebody burst through the back of the booth, and he was your classic MAGA guy, khakis and t-shirt. And he started screaming at me about how the pride flag was the worst thing that ever happened to America, how we were ruining the country, how we were hurting children. He went on and on for a while before I kind of got fed up and started to chase him away. But later that day, we learned that a truckload of those guys, a van load, a U-Haul full of those guys in the khakis and t-shirts, tried to disrupt a gay pride event in Idaho. I was just glad that I only had to deal with one knucklehead. But basically he spewed everything that you will hear from the right-wing trolls about LGBTQ rights, about the rainbow flag, etc.
Yeah. Let's dive into some of that rhetoric that's getting thrown around and legislation in states around the country.
Sure. In the publicity for this program, I forget now what the numbers are, but it's incredible the number of bills. I think in your note to me, you said over 250 pieces of legislation in various states around the country. Yeah.
Kind of take a broad overview of what this discriminatory legislation is aimed at nationally, statewide legislation, but they seem to be developing a theme. To me, it seemed they started this has grown straight out of the critical race theory attacks on schools and stuff, and now they've switched it to gay and trans students, and now we're talk about rhetoric. We're talking about groomers again and grooming. This is something you used to hear back in the 50s and early 60s and stuff.
Sure. Anita Bryant is alive and well. Her basic point way back when was that gay people, LGBTQ people don't reproduce. Yeah, actually we do. That we don't reproduce and therefore we have to recruit. It is complete nonsense. There was one British advertising company that's about 10 years ago was given the task, convince people to become gay. You're a advertising company, you're a marketing company, you make billions of dollars selling everything. Sell gay. And they spent about 6 months trying to work up campaigns where they would sell, it's cool to be gay, you can be gay. And they found after the 6 months that nothing they were doing was working. They tried focus groups, they tried showing the ads they were coming up with, and people were like, no, I'm straight. I'm not going to be gay, or I'm not going to be trans. No, you can't sell this. So it's nonsense. It doesn't happen. But this is the rhetoric that they've used before, and they're using it again. There are all kinds of laws that they're trying to pass. Let's talk about one specific one that is passed, and that comes into play the day after tomorrow. So in Florida, we call it the Don't Say Gay bill. They call it the Parental Rights bill. But in Florida, they have made it illegal for teachers, schools, counselors to say or do anything that might indicate anything about gender or sexuality, specifically in K through 3. And a lot of teachers have been wondering in Florida, okay, what exactly is that going to mean? Well, one thing it's meant is that the principals have gone through the school libraries and removed thousands of books that might happen to show same gender parents with a kid, in a board book. So that's happened. But now they just got the word, the teachers just got the word, what it means for their practices in the classroom. They have been told to remove all rainbows from any wall, any desk, anywhere. They're not allowed to wear clothes that have rainbows on them. And they've been told that if they have a picture of their spouse on their desk in their office, the spouse has to be a different gender spouse. If it's the same gender spouse, the photo has to be removed. They've also been told that if any child comes out to them and says, I think I might be gay or I might be trans, that teacher is required to report that child. So, I mean,
report to whom?
To their parents, to the administration, and then call their parents and say, your child just told me he or she thinks she's gay or lesbian. It's just horrific. The law is probably more vague than that, but the school district brought in a bunch of lawyers and they had a workshop and they decided this is what we're going to tell the teachers they have to do. So there are bills like that happening all across the country. The other bills that are targeting trans kids, they're trying to prevent trans kids from competing in sports if the gender that was marked on their birth certificate doesn't match the gender that they are at the, that they believe they are when they're trying to compete in sports. Trans bathroom bills that would prosecute kids for going into the wrong bathroom. Some of the most pernicious laws that they're working on right now are laws that would prosecute parents for taking their children to another state to receive gender affirming care. Now they're outlawing gender affirming care in their own states, that they're doing that. But now they also want to prosecute parents who take their kids to another state like California to go to UCSF, for example, and get gender affirming care. And their laws would also allow individuals within those states to sue anyone in our state who aids or abets a family getting gender affirming care in our state.
So a doctor at UCSF could be criminally charged by one of these states. Is this part of the Texas law?
Yeah, so they could be criminally prosecuted, or probably the first step will be to allow people to sue them. It's easier to get a lawsuit, rolling than it is to get prosecution. So our state right now is working on legislation that would tell our courts not to hear those cases, those lawsuits, and would tell our police agencies that they may get a warrant to arrest a UCSF doctor, but that warrant has to be the very, 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 very lowest priority for those police departments, and therefore they don't have to really enforce it. But this is the craziness that we're in right now, that we're going to have to protect people. Same thing is going on with abortion. Texas and other states are working on laws that would criminally prosecute or allow lawsuits against people in states that allow abortions for aiding and abetting a woman from their state coming here and getting an abortion.
Jeez. What are the avenues of fight back on these laws? Is it just up to the voters in Texas and Florida to overcome their own? Given what the Supreme Court ruled this past week, doesn't seem like it's very hopeful to be relying on the courts.
Right.
I mean, there seems to be a lot of First Amendment stuff here, and telling a teacher she can't put a picture of her wife on her own desk in her school, and
so there's a bunch of things happening. So there, of course, ACLU, Human Rights Campaign, Lambda Legal Defense, NARAL on the abortion issue, Planned Parenthood. Everybody is building up their legal coffers to go and fight these things. Yes, the Supreme Court made a horrible decision about abortion, and yes, they'll probably make more horrible decisions in the coming, months and years. But we have states' rights. We have our courts, we have our legislators, and we have to work really hard. One, to make our state a sanctuary state for people and to protect those who provide that sanctuary from being persecuted by other states. And yeah, we do have to work on, getting people elected who will change the tide in these other states. That's going to be a lot more work. We just have to keep working at it.
So let's move from, because it's kind of logical. You just mentioned the recent Supreme Court decision on Roe, and quite disturbingly, in a concurring opinion, but went much further than the rest of the court, Clarence Thomas said that it was time to reconsider its decisions under Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. I'll go back through those in a minute.
Sure.
But he has rejected the entire idea, and you mentioned this earlier about Loving versus Virginia, allowing interracial marriage. That was based on a concept that's long been around and used by the courts called substantive due process, that the 14th Amendment guarantees you due process for your rights, even if they are already administratively protected, but especially if they aren't. And regardless of whether they're specifically mentioned in the Constitution to begin with, because let's face it, in the 18th century, nobody was talking about gay rights.
No.
So the ones that he's questioning that would be impacted, that like Loving, were decided with the same substantive due process. Griswold was decided in 1965, and that gives couples, anyone really, the right to buy and use contraceptives. Lawrence was decided in 2003, and that gave the right to engage in same-sex intimacy. And Obergefell, of course, in 2015, the right to same-sex marriage. He's got quite a hit list out there. Are you worried about the Supreme Court coming after gay marriage?
Yes, I'm worried a little less right at the moment about the Supreme Court doing it, and more about an activist state simply deciding that they're not going to recognize someone's marriage, or ordering clerks not to issue marriage licenses. In the short term, somebody's going to try something, and it's going to happen relatively soon. And it's going to take its time to get up to the Supreme Court. Obergefell was a 5-4 decision, and we're now at a 6-3 as far as that law is concerned. 6-3 against. So I am nervous about something eventually reaching this Supreme Court. I just want to share, Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is no fan of precedents. He is no fan of stare decisis. He is no fan of the 14th or the 9th Amendment. He is no fan, especially, of the two of them being combined to provide rights to people. I want to share what Mark Joseph Stern said about him. Thomas is one of the most erratic and capricious justices in the history of the court. In his eternal quest to divine the original meaning of the Constitution, he zigzags wildly between cases, seeking to destabilize the law on the basis of his underinformed stabs in the dark. And that correctly describes him. But sadly, right now he's got Amy Coney Barrett, and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, that will probably go along with anything he comes up with. And the Chief Justice, John Roberts, desperately trying to keep the court relevant and sane. So yes, I do worry about it. In the immediate moment right now, I am much more worried about women's reproductive rights. This is a tsunami of damage that this court has done to women. And on the gay rights stuff, on the LGBTQ, the Don't Say Gay, all these anti-gay laws, 1.8 million children and youths seriously consider suicide every year in this country. That's one child or youth every 45 seconds. Now, we know from our work on the commission, we know from the research that's been done that having one adult in a child's life who is supportive of them, who lets them know that it's okay to be who they are, one adult can reduce the risk of suicide by 40%.
Wow.
In Florida, in Florida, they have just shut the door on the most significant set of adults that will be in children's lives, teachers, from being able to even say, this is a safe space for you. You're okay. They're killing children. That's what they're doing with these laws.
Well put. Well put. Sadly, well put. Let's open this up to our audience. We'd love to have you join us with your question or comment. I will not tell you just to make a question, just to ask a question. If you've got an opinion to express, we're welcome to hear it. You're welcome to share it. I just ask that you respect others and don't go on too long with whether it's a question or a statement that you want to say. If you want to join us on camera, raise your hand. Click on the little raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen. And David Simon, who's helping out behind the scenes here, will make you a panelist. Your Zoom screen will disappear very briefly, and when it comes back on, you'll be a panelist. You have to turn your own camera and microphone back on. We can't do it remotely, so be sure you do that if you come on with a question. If you'd rather just type a question, click on the Q&A button at the bottom, and I'll read your questions to Craig. So I'm not seeing any takers yet, but
they're shy.
They're shy. It's the camera part, I think. It's not like being down at the old TV studio. So I want to go back to this Texas law, and I hadn't actually heard about this out-of-state stuff until you sent me some notes a few days ago. So in addition to a doctor at UCSF being a threat by these folks, for providing counseling or medical care, suppose a family coming to seek this kind of care needed a place to stay and you and Derek put them up. Are you then liable to a lawsuit?
Yes. Yes. The framers of this law want to punish anybody who aids and abets someone getting an abortion.
Anybody. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one open question here. From Cheryl, says, I understand that Justice Thomas is married to a white woman. Would that temper his moves on interracial laws?
No.
He did.
It will not.
No, he did kind of leave out Loving versus Virginia when he talked about the mistake.
Obergefell and Griswold, and no, he can't. We have the game that our company created, Civio, the civil rights game. It's a card game that teaches the history of civil rights through Supreme Court cases, issues, amendments, freedoms. No, if you knock down Obergefell, and you've already knocked down Roe, and you knock down Griswold, and you basically say there is no fundamental right to marriage in the Constitution. If you say that, Loving versus Virginia is out as well. Now, it doesn't mean that a state is going to suddenly pass a law against interracial marriage, but they could.
They could theoretically, yes.
And a clerk could refuse to issue a marriage license.
That's an interesting twist on that. All right, let's go to our first audience member here, Lynn Heidi Coper. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm
so glad I tuned into this Zoom meeting. A couple of things. One, I'm going to have to find out where in Menlo Park they're flying the flag. I don't know if it's at City Hall or where it is.
Do you know, Craig?
City Hall.
Oh, it is. Okay, great. Great. I've been researching two things. One is the whole pill issue. There are two pills. There's Plan B, which you take within 72 hours of having intercourse unprotected. And then there's the one where you're already pregnant and you take within 10 weeks.
Yes.
And that's apparently confusing to a lot of people how this new decision affects the whole pill issue. If you can get the pill online, and so they're talking about, but you need a prescription for the one where you're already pregnant.
Right.
And the effect of it is pretty bad. You get pretty horrendous cramps before you actually abort. It's not a very pleasant process, but a huge percentage of women use the pill versus the surgical abortion and stuff.
Sure. Let me share
And one other thing is there's a thing on
Be quick,
NPR.
please, Lynn.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, let me just share that, as a gay man, when I started looking at the abortion issue, I didn't know the difference between the morning after pill and what's known as an abortion pill. I started a discussion with some folks online about, next thing you know, they're going to ban the morning after pill. And people all just said, no, they're not going to do that because that's contraception. Well, contraception, Griswold, something they want to knock down. They want to knock down the ability to prevent pregnancies as well as the ability to abort pregnancies.
That was States first on Thomas's list.
First on his list.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for joining us again. And now let's go to Donna Wallach. Hi, Donna.
Hi. So I just want to kind of like make a comment, and I don't know if it was covered already because I joined late, and I'm sorry. So I know lots of people say go vote, go vote, go vote, but we oftentimes don't get the results we want when we elect people we think are going to have our backs. And so personally, I think one of the better ways of acting is grassroots organizing. And I do think we have to figure out, but we have to figure out how to unite together, how to become dependent on each other and independent of the system, because the system is messed up beyond belief. I am terrified of what's coming down. I don't even think we've begun to see the worst of it yet. I think it's just beginning. And this Supreme Court, these horrible justices have all kinds of stuff up their sleeves that they haven't even begun to talk about yet. All the kinds of voter taking away the vote of people by the not gentrification, but by the gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And also, if you listen to Greg Palast, who talks about how they remove people from the voter polls, I think things are going to get much, much, much worse. So I think we need to figure out how to, across so-called borders of states, across counties, across whatever, and I don't know how to do it. I'm thinking there are people who know how, or there's people who have ideas about how to do it. And then grassroots organizing, that we, the people, get our power back.
Yeah.
If we even ever had power. But
So let me share.
Let's get
let me share,
Greg's comments on that. Thank you, Donna.
So one of the things that I started hearing, as soon as Roe was overturned, was, gay people, LGBTQ people, they should be worried because Roe was overturned, because then that's going to impact their rights. Well, let's step back. LGBTQ people should be worried when anybody's rights are being taken away. Black lives matter, women's lives matter, children's lives matter. We all agree on so much more than we disagree on. And the powers that be, the powers that are trying to harm us, throw so much stuff at us that we all feel like we have to be fighting for our particular special issue. And we got to get past that. We got to realize that the rainbow really is a rainbow coalition. It's all of us together. We are incredibly powerful, and we can get what we want if we all see each other's issues as our issues. I want to take a little step back on the comment about we elect our officials and they don't do what we want. I work in the county of San Mateo with some incredible people, and our county board of supervisors, the city councils that we have in the various cities and towns with whom I've worked, they really do listen. And when this the Roe thing started to permeate, when we started to realize what was going to happen, our county supervisors, for example, went out and dedicated money and resources and energy to make sure that women who will be coming to our county will be able to get the services that they need. They know that we have to have more doctors and nurses and that we have to support the clinics that are in our county. And they jumped in and they started working on that early on. So yes, I feel like, in national politics, we may not really love everything that the politicians that we elect do, but locally we have an incredible amount of power, and they really do listen to us when we get together and talk and tell them what we really want.
Very positive message. Thanks for that. We've got a typed question here. Is a movement to impeach Thomas a possibility? That maybe you should wait till I have the lawyers on this program to talk about the decision in Roe. And I am working on putting together
Good.
such a program, and another one on the January 6th Select Committee. But have you heard anything about this? I mean, there does seem to be some real concern about his, especially his wife, being involved in all of this coup business.
Well, I'm not an expert on that kind of area, but I would say this. I think the January 6th committee, the select committee, if they want to subpoena Jenny Thomas, I think they have enough reason to do so. And I don't think she has any excuse whatsoever to refuse that subpoena. And it would be interesting to watch what the Justice Department does if she simply refuses to show up. It could create quite a mess for her husband. And I'd love to see that mess. It's a better mess than the ketchup on the wall in the White House. Really good.
Yeah, let me recommend to people, and I'll take this opportunity to say I'll include this. After each one of our other voices online, I do send out an email to everybody who registered. We get your email addresses when you log in, with some resources on this. And I particularly recommend a very recent article or a column in the New York Times by Jamel Bowie that kind of runs down all the power that Congress does have vis-a-vis the Supreme Court, including being able to change how many people are on the court, restricting what they can deal with. They could take some of this stuff right away from the court as an area that they get to rule on. So Congress does have a lot of power, including impeachment power, over the Supreme Court. So I will include that, and we'll send along some other stuff, including a link to the sermon that Craig and his husband Derek gave at First Presbyterian Church just a few days ago. I watched it. It's terrific. It'll be a good follow-up to this, and I'll include some other articles. I don't see any more questions, so I think I'll start to take this toward a wrap-up, Craig, but why don't we take a couple of minutes here right at the end?
Actually, Derek is sitting over here next to me, and he had a question, so I'm going to.
Okay, fair enough.
Executive privilege.
Sure.
Thanks. I only wanted to point out a couple of things because it's easy to feel disempowered during this time. And the two things I did want to point out about working at a local level are two things. One is educating ourselves. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing is a problem with the trigger laws that are coming up and even things with don't say gay and other things, is that the vagueness of those laws are causing people at local levels to kind of overshoot what they're supposed to do, and doing too much, doing more than the law even requires them to do because they're afraid. And I think it's educating ourselves about the limits of those laws that's really important at this time, so that overshooting doesn't occur. The second thing that we can do at a local level is that organizations like BAMEC and other organizations look at local elections, school boards and other elections, which are really where many of the policies are being implemented once these laws are passed. And so I think we need to watch that, as well as usually once a year, I don't only look at the advocacy groups that tend to agree with my politics, but I even look at the ones that don't agree and see who they're endorsing, because I find that informative as well.
Yes, good point. Stay with us, Derek, because I'm going to ask to wrap up. Give us the elevator pitch about Reach and Teach. It's such a wonderful story. I want more people to know about it. This is the business that they run in San Mateo.
Well, we're located in San Mateo, and it's
On 25th Avenue.
and it's called Reach and Teach Books, Toys, and Gifts, where we offer books, toys, fair trade gifts, and other ethically produced products from around the world, all designed to be centered on gender equality, sustainable living, and peacemaking.
And every single book in our children's section is banned in Florida.
Is that right?
Just about every single book on our shelves is for some reason banned in Florida.
That maybe you should rename the store Banned in Florida.
Exactly. That's a good idea.
Okay. Craig WIESNER and Derek Kikuchi, I'm glad you got in here at the end. Derek, thank you so much for joining us here on Other Voices. Really appreciate everything you had to say, all the work that you're doing. And to the audience, thank you for attending. Thanks again, Craig and Derek.
Thank
for joining
you.
us. Many thanks to David Simon, working feverishly behind the scenes to keep this looking good for us. Thank you, David. And again, thanks everybody else for coming, and we'll sign off. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Take care. Good night.